Hey there, so can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up or a yes. Emery says yes, Tracy says yes. Okay, I think that's the majority of you guys. Rebecca gives me a check mark. Okay, good. So today I'm going to kind of lead this conversation on how to use LinkedIn to build a professional portfolio. And I'm a pretty avid user of LinkedIn. I've been using it for, oh my gosh, probably about maybe 3 to 4 years now. And, you know, my students use it. When I was at Clemson, I used to teach at Clemson University, and I found that my students were using it, especially right before they had to find internships or full-time positions. They really got into it, and so I then realized it was a good way for me to stay connected with my students via social media that's not Facebook, which is a little more personal for me. I don't normally Facebook friend my students on Facebook. So I will connect with them on Instagram or Pinterest, but I want Facebook to me is a little bit more personal. So, but with LinkedIn, it is a way for me to keep up with alumni, see what jobs they're taking. A lot of them have changed names. So they get married and they change their name, and so a lot of times they'll update that in LinkedIn, especially if they're still job searching and that kind of thing. So it's a really good tool for keeping up with your alumni, and you can email them usually via LinkedIn if you don't know what their current email is and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. So if you will just respond in the chat which best describes how often you use LinkedIn. So you're always on LinkedIn. I usually check in on LinkedIn on a daily basis. So I probably would either be an A or a B. You do it throughout the week. You seldom use it, maybe a couple times a month, or you never do. So yeah, so Rebecca's saying every day, great articles for some of the presentations. And one of the areas that I kind of lack in is with discussion. And they say if you really want to be prominent on LinkedIn, it's good to participate in discussion. I hear that especially if you're looking for a job. It's good to be part of a discussion because you get noticed more that way. So I think everybody has kind of put their input on that one. So we have another question here. So which best describes your use of LinkedIn? Do you use it for job searching, professional networking, keeping up with alumni, or maybe you're an A, B, and a C. We should have included a D, all of the above, right? And so I kind of use it for all of them. And I was telling Emery and Tracy earlier, I've been job searching this year, and so I've been really, really active on LinkedIn. And if I have been invited to come on campus for an interview, or before I do a phone interview, I'll find out who's on the search committee, and I will look those people up on LinkedIn, and I'll connect with them on LinkedIn, and I'll find out about them. A lot of times you can read in their bio what their interest areas are, and so then you have that information to kind of connect with them when you go on campus and say, oh, hey, I saw that you're doing research in XYZ. That's really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? So that's kind of one of the ways that I've used LinkedIn too. So, but professional networking is huge for sure. So let's see here. So the basics. So kind of if you're not that familiar with LinkedIn, it takes a little bit of effort to kind of get it up and running. If you know about LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're just starting with LinkedIn, you'll notice that there's a lot of sections to go through to add content to. But I try to tell my students, I encourage them to start a LinkedIn account, and they get very overwhelmed with the amount of information they have to put in. And I said, oh, just take it in baby steps, do a short bio. If they don't know how to write a bio, LinkedIn offers some suggestions on how to do one. Of course, you can Google how to write a bio on LinkedIn. So, that's kind of a starting place. Start with your bio. And then a lot of times people say, well, when am I done? It seems like LinkedIn is always asking me, do I want to complete this section? Do I want to complete that section? Do I want to work on this now? Well, the catch is your profile is never complete because there's always room for more, right? There's always room for professional development. There's always room to improve. And so I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I'm going to show you what my LinkedIn looks like. And you'll notice that there's a little bubble over to the side on the right-hand side, and it fills up, the bubble fills up according to how much information you have in your profile. Mine fills up almost all the way to the top, but there's a little bit of white at the top, even though I'm considered an all-star. There's a little bit of white at the top where it won't fill completely. And so one day I actually Googled, how do I fill up my little circle? Like, what am I missing? I think I've filled in everything that there is to fill in. And it basically said, you don't ever fill in your circle. And I was like, oh, okay, touche. I guess you don't, because there's always room for improvement. So one of the other things that you'll want to do is start getting connected. And I tell my students who are just starting out, connect with me, connect with your other instructors. If they're on LinkedIn, they will connect with you because they want to keep up with you. And most faculty are pretty comfortable with connecting with their students on LinkedIn. Like I was saying earlier, for those of you who are just making it in, welcome. I'm glad you guys could come. But LinkedIn is really one of the only social media areas that I want to connect with my students. I want to be able to keep up with them. They're graduating, they're getting married, their names are changing, their jobs are changing. I want to find out where they're going. And because I teach in a very hands-on, industry-connected area, those students who are working in industry could potentially help me. If I need a box of plates for my printing press, I look at who's working at what plate companies, and I reach out to those former students and I say, hey, you know, I was wondering maybe if you could get me a box of plates donated. And a lot of times they will, because they like having a connection with a former teacher and they want to help out. They want to help the program out. You know, they want to stay connected. They're an alum. So staying connected with students and alumni is good, and colleagues. And then for job searching, so I mentioned this earlier, it's always good to try and find out if you're interested, you know, if you're job searching and you know you're going to be interviewing with, you know, a particular university or maybe it's somebody in industry, find out who those hiring people are and connect with them on LinkedIn. And as soon as you put in that request to connect with them, they're going to wonder who you are. They're going to check you out and they're going to look at your profile. And so doing that is a way to get them to look at your profile too. So this is me, and you can follow me at MHCarroll on Twitter or Instagram. It's the same handle. So if you want to look me up, and if you want to tweet about what we're talking about today, if you don't mind using the hashtag @StateWebinar for Webinar Wednesdays, we would appreciate that. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you kind of where I'm at in LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try and answer them. I'm keeping kind of my eye down there every now and then. So let me share my desktop real quick. All right, so I got this collapsed. So I'm going to bring this up. I think everybody can see this. And so if I refresh this, you'll see over here on the right-hand side that my profile strength has this little circle, and it fills up almost to the top. And they tell you kind of where you're at in your profile strength. And you'll see that mine is pretty strong. So they consider me an all-star. I have an all-star profile, basically. And so I was telling Emery earlier today, I used to have a background image on here, and I've been having some trouble. I think LinkedIn went through some changes recently where they thought about taking the background photo off for free members and only offering it to premium members. So if you're a premium member, you definitely get the option of adding a background photo. But then I did a little research, and it said that if you had a background photo, they removed it, but then you can still add it back. Obviously, it wouldn't say add a background photo. If I couldn't add one, I keep trying to. It's not working. But anyway, so there's a glitch there. So with LinkedIn, basically you kind of start with your bio, or they call it a summary, and I'm kind of in edit mode, so when I roll over stuff here, it gives me the little pencil, so it gives me the option to edit any of this stuff. if I wanted to send somebody a link to my profile, I would copy this and I just hit Command-C on my keyboard, and I'll just paste it right here into the chat. So if I wanted to send somebody a direct link to my LinkedIn profile, I could do it that way. I'm going to skip these sections. They're asking you, do you want to add these to your profile? And, you know, a lot of times that stuff will pop up here at the top too. So I'm going to skip over that. The experience, you always put what's the most current experience, and I think a lot of times it defaults to the top anyway. LinkedIn is getting to where they're adding more and more to each section, you know, things that you can basically tag. So, for example, I'm currently a lecturer in the Graphic Arts Department or the Graphic Arts program in the Department of Technology at Appalachian State. And so it keeps up with when I started and how long I've been here. I have a little bio about what I do as a lecturer in this program. I've got 2 projects, 4 organizations, 5 honors and awards, and 2 recommendations associated with my position here at Appalachian State. And so a lot of times by default these are collapsed, but if I open them you can see I did the 14th for 2014 last year, and then I did the Course Redesign Institute with Tracy this past summer. And so potentially what I could do is I could scroll down to my project section and I could look for Tracy, search for Tracy up here if I'm connected, which I think I'm connected with her on LinkedIn, and I could add her to this project. So let me just kind of scroll down since I'm talking about projects. And Emery, keep a check on me for time because I definitely can go on and on and on, and I want to give other people time to talk to since you're both here. So let me see, go down here to projects. So certifications or projects. So on the 14th for 2014, you'll see that I put myself, but then I added Vandy Wu to this, and she teaches in my program area here in the Department of Technology. And so she worked with me on this proposal and this project that we did to convert a class to an online class. So the Course Redesign Institute here, if I click edit, it says who are the team members, so I can add Tracy. There she is. So I could just add her right there, and then if I click save, it's pretty easy and straightforward. Now she's on there with me, and I could potentially think, okay, well, who else? Kate Brinko, you know, I think I might be connected to Kate on here too. And so if I wanted to, I could potentially add her because I remember she had a big contribution in helping with the Course Redesign Institute. And so I could go in and add her too. And so I'm not sure, Tracy, this may or may not show up on your profile since I've added it here, or it may give you, you know, it may send you something through LinkedIn that says you've been added to Hope's Course Redesign Institute in her project section. But you do have that option, and I like doing that. I like being able to add people. So you'll see down here, when I worked for Clemson, we did something for National Distance Learning Week, and we had all these people involved, and so I tried to add as many people as I was connected with on LinkedIn. You can't just add anybody. You have to actually be connected with that person on LinkedIn. And so the same for this Sloan C virtual conference and so on. So let me go back up here where I'm at. So I've got 4 organizations. So if you're a member of an association or an organization, then it'll ask you when you're creating that or adding it, where were you working at the time that you were a member of this organization. So then I said, well, while I was a lecturer at Appalachian State. So that it's kind of tagged it now to this experience, or to my experience as a lecturer. I've got some awards in here because it does the same thing. It'll ask you where were you at the time that you received this award, or what job were you working at. I've got a couple of recommendations here, one from a colleague and then one from a student. And I think it's also important, I don't have as many recommendations for students, but it does help students a great deal if you could do recommendations for them on LinkedIn. And if you just Google, you know, LinkedIn recommendation for a student, there's tons of resources out there to kind of help you put the right words in there that can really help a student if a potential employer is looking at their LinkedIn profile. It really helps them look good. And so, okay, so you just confirmed and added it. Okay, cool. So I wasn't sure how that worked. Nobody's ever emailed me and say, hey, I just saw that you added me to a project, so I wasn't sure. I was just kind of willy-nilly adding people, and I was like, well, if they don't like it, they'll just let me know. So anyway, you also have the option to add either videos or links to websites or images. So I've added an image here of me teaching in the lab. This gate promo, if you click it, well, if I click it, it asks me to edit it. But actually, I think if I wasn't in edit mode, it's an Animoto video, so it would actually play kind of a slideshow video. So let me cancel that. And then I've got some other things. This is a link to a website where I gave a presentation on the social classroom, and then this is just a scan of an award that I received. So I just kind of pick and choose random things that I feel might be relevant to just add some flavor, what I call flavor, to just this experience section of my profile. I know I'm taking a long time. This is just in the experience section, but there's so much to put into LinkedIn. And I think that's why my students get overwhelmed when they first start it, because it's a lot. There's a lot that you can add, but the more you can put in there, the better it makes you look. And so since I've kind of been on the job search, one of the best things about LinkedIn, because it really is kind of a visual Vita, in a sense, it's like you have this online portfolio, no need to create a website, right, to put all this stuff up there. You can kind of just use LinkedIn to do it and kind of brag about yourself. So it tells you when people are looking at your profile. And so my phone actually told me this morning that I had, you know, X number of profile views on LinkedIn. And probably leading up to this webinar, that's why people were looking at my LinkedIn. Because I don't have a premium account, I only have a free account, it will only let me know, you know, who like the first 3 people are that have looked at my profile. But I can tell you that in job searching, if I was getting ready to go on campus for an on-campus interview and I connected with some of the hiring committee via LinkedIn, it always seemed like that week prior to me going on campus, I would get alerts that said people are looking at your LinkedIn, and sure enough, I would go and see who are these people, and it would be people from the hiring committee. So that was kind of good confirmation for me that they wanted to learn a little bit about me and be prepared, just as I was trying to be prepared by looking at their profile and connecting with them on LinkedIn. And so if they've kept up with, you know, their LinkedIn, it really does help to kind of get information. Tracy, did you have a question?
Can you hear me? Okay. I wanted to ask 2 things. The chat is getting kind of, I asked a question a little while ago, but it's hard to keep up when you're speaking. So I was wondering, you shared with us where to get the link for your LinkedIn. Do you put that on your CV?
Actually, my CV is an interactive CV, and so I have my branding is pretty good, and so I have a logo on my CV, and that logo is interactive. I also have, and I can bring that up real quick and show you guys, or I can just bring up my website actually. So I have used the AppState access. You have web server space via AppState, and so I have a website that I've created that's kind of my online portfolio. So if I hover over my logo here, right, that takes me back to this portfolio that's right here. But then if I go all the way down to the bottom, and I've got a lot of interactive in my CV, a lot. This takes you to, like, if there's still a page up for a conference that I presented at, I've got a link to it. But I have these icons down here, and so this LinkedIn, if I click it, will actually take somebody to my profile. But I'm logged in as me right now, so it kind of throws me into edit mode. But it would throw somebody else just to my profile. Does that
I wonder for those, I guess I always think about things in terms of what I might tell my students. For students who would have, and I know we have someone from HR here too, who would have a more static CV or resume. Would you recommend putting the link to their LinkedIn profile And then my other question, so you can just move into that one, is you said that you ask people, or you connect with people when you're going for a job interview, and I've been on 4 searches this year at the university, and people have done the same with me. It's kind of awkward on my side, so I was just wondering what you think. Like, what if the person, what do you do, or what would you recommend if you're not hired at that place? Do you then, like, undo that connection, or what do you think? Because again, on my side, when we were in the early stages, it was a little bit awkward to connect with someone when it almost felt like entering into a relationship, and I wasn't sure if we really were going to. So I'd just be curious about your thoughts on that.
So to answer the first question, absolutely, I would have students put a link to their profile on their CV, or they could even, it depends on which version of Microsoft Word that they're in. So they could put like a click here to connect with me on LinkedIn, and they could highlight the word here, and then they could, make that a hyperlink basically to their LinkedIn, which I think is a lot cleaner if you're using Microsoft Word, for example, on a resume. So, but I have found that if you're using a Mac and you do it that way, and you're going to save it as a PDF and send it to somebody, that link is no longer active. So just be aware. I only know this because I was recently working with a student. Because I teach in graphics, my CV is in InDesign, and so I can do all types of interactive stuff in InDesign, and then I can export it as a PDF, and it works just fine. So, to answer your second question, all those people that I've connected with that were on those hiring committees, I've stayed connected with them because I want to be connected with people in my industry. If it's, another graphics program at another university, I'm going to see those people at conferences anyway. And so why not stay connected with them? And if they update their profile, and if they've changed jobs and they're, at Clemson now and they're no longer at Illinois State, then when I see them at a conference, I'll say, oh, I saw you're at Clemson now. Congratulations on the new position. And so in my mind, I guess I look at it as a way to just stay connected with people I'd stay connected with anyway in industry, because they're all graphics teachers is what I'm trying to say. So it depends. If you feel like it's weird and awkward, then, you could potentially stay connected with them, but you're probably never going to look at their profile. You may or may not see them at conferences, and it's not like they're going to be emailing you. But because you are connected with them, there is that possibility that they may email you and say, hey, I noticed I didn't get chosen for this position. I'm just wondering, who got chosen and how did they stand out from my qualifications? What was I missing? And that may happen, and it may make you feel awkward, because I would probably do the same thing. If it was a job that I really wanted, I'd probably contact the hiring chair and say, hey, I noticed that you didn't pick me. I appreciate the time that I had to spend on campus with you. I was just wondering why you didn't pick me. And I'm not sure what all the rules are. I've only been on one hiring committee in the past, and so, but I've never disconnected with somebody, and I'm not sure what happens if you disconnect. Like, on Facebook, it doesn't give them a red flag and say, this person just disconnected with you. It just kind of happens, and the person doesn't know until they try and look at your profile, and then they can't. So that's definitely something I'd have to do a little bit of research about. There might be people who disconnected with me from me on LinkedIn or took me out of their, connections. I will be honest with you and say that when I left my former institution, there were people on there that I did not want to be connected with anymore, and I did not want them to see where I was going and what I was involved with. It was just a personal thing. So I took them off my connections. They continue to show up and ask me. It continues to show up on the sideline and say, do you want to connect with this person? Yeah, so you can just take them, you can just say, I don't want to be connected with this person anymore. And I've never had any flashback from it at all. So does anybody have any other questions? I know I only covered the experience. I wanted to kind of scroll through and show you that I've added certifications. So if you have a certificate, like I have a certificate in integrative STEM ed from Virginia Tech. I've done CPR before when I was a high school teacher. I had to do CPR training. So I included that because at one point I was actually interviewing with some high schools, and they ask that. They want to know, do you have anything like CPR training, especially if you're teaching a hands-on lab with safety issues. They want to know that. Projects you can add, anybody you can add onto those projects. Projects are pretty easy to add, especially if the website where you applied to the project has a little blip. I basically just kind of copy-paste their little intro and add my own tweak to it. So let's see. And I know you guys are kind of talking about some stuff, and so I think Emery's kind of handling those questions. Let me know if I need to jump in. I have all these projects. Let me get past here. So organizations, so if you're a member of any organizations or associations, you'd want to put that on there. You'll see that I even went as far as to say I'm a member of this association, but while I was a member, I wasn't just a member. I was an award winner, and I served as the student research judging panelist for this organization. So if you're the chair of a committee for that organization, you're going to want to put that on there. You'll see, like here, I'm just a member. But in the past, I've been chair of certain committees and things like that. So let's see. If you have any honors and awards, it's good to put that stuff up there. I will tell you that I've had student winners, and so over here in graphics, there's a lot of competitions that we can submit student work for. And so a lot of times we'll get multiple winners. And so instead of listing the students' names, I'll just say I had 3 students who won first place, 2 students who won second, and 1 student who got best of category. And so I'll just put what the award was for. So PICA Award student winners. I put student winners so that they don't think that I won the award, but that it was my students who did. And I'll put the total amount of winners. That also goes for any money that you get. So there's a scholarship out there for people who are in graphics who are continuing education. And so I have put, for every year that I've gotten money, I've put that, even though it's a scholarship, to me it's an award. So I put it in there, and for how much. Numbers, the more you can put numbers, whether it's in a resume, a Vita, or on LinkedIn, if you get a grant, how much is that grant for? If you get a scholarship, how much is it for? People love seeing numbers. And so I always try to include numbers where it's appropriate. So again, student winners, how many winners? I did the Blackboard Exemplary Course Program, and so they gave us a certificate basically saying that we participated in that program. Any other things that you got a certificate in or you had a responsibility? Some of my stuff is really, really, really old, so I'm just going to skip past it. Volunteer, this is where I lack. So if you do any volunteer work, whether it's with your church, I've seen people put where they volunteer with their church. If you teach Sunday school or you do a small group at your church, I've seen people put that on here. When I was at Clemson, I participated every summer in Bring Your Daughter to Clemson Day, which was sponsored by the Alumni Association at Clemson. And so I put that up there. I tend to donate blood pretty often, and at one point I think I did have that I donated blood, so many consecutive years for when Clemson played USC, who's their rival. They would have a huge blood drive, and I always participated in that, but then I took it off. I kind of was on the fence about whether that was a volunteer thing or not. Maybe you guys can weigh in on that. I don't know if anybody has donating blood on their LinkedIn profile. And then they'll, causes you care about. This is something that LinkedIn just by default will ask you organizations that you support, and then I just kind of put a list of organizations that I already had in my profile. This is good if you're bad for keeping up with your transcript information, or if you're looking for a job. So for example, I recently interviewed with a university that said, well, you know, can you teach graphic design? And I said, oh yeah, well I could. I teach it in all the classes that I teach, but I teach it at the surface level because it's part of learning, you know, learning how to do layout and then making plates and things like that. These are classes that I have taken, Tracy. So courses that I've taken with Virginia Tech, with Appalachian State, I might have a couple of Clemson, they may not be listed up here. I've got Appalachian State twice because I have an undergrad and a graduate degree from Appalachian State. I'm inbred, I guess you could say. So, and I'm done with coursework at Virginia Tech. I'm just taking research hours right now. But it's kind of like this quick visual transcript in my mind. And so if somebody were to say, well, I need to know if you have 18 hours at the graduate level in graphic design courses, because if you do, then technically you can teach graphic design courses at our institution. Well, no, I don't. I've never taken any formal courses in graphic design because graphic design and graphic arts are not the same, just so y'all know. One is in art department, and then one is more print technology related. So that's a huge confusion between students and my mom, for example, still tells people that I teach graphic design, no matter how many times I correct her. So I've given up on that. But this is huge. So skills and endorsements are big. And as you can see, I've been endorsed by quite a few people. I love that it shows people the little profile pics of everyone who's endorsed me and for what skills. And so I think what it does is it kind of tops these off at how many endorsements you have for a particular skill that you've put up here, and you can type in any skills that you want. A lot of times it will recognize skills as you start to type them. It will have kind of a database and it knows what you're trying to type, and then you can say, okay, yep, that's what I want to add. So they have kind of these generic keywords, I guess you could call them, and then you can actually create your own if you want. It's just like hashtags, right? You can either use ones that are pretty common or create your own, which I'm one of those that tends to just make up really long ones that don't make any sense because it's funny to me. So I've got 55 endorsements for Adobe Creative Suite, and then it just kind of goes down for there with how many endorsements I have for these. I have all these other skills. There is a cap on how many skills you can add to your profile, probably unless you upgrade to premium. So if you just keep adding and adding and adding, at one point it's going to say, oh, you can't add any more. You'll have to delete some if you want to add this other one. And so sometimes I'll go back in here occasionally and I'll say, oh, you know what? I haven't gotten any endorsements for email blasts or pearls or digital asset management. I may just take those off, or I may change those out to be something that's more graphics teaching or teaching related. And then if it comes up in somebody's profile that I'm connected with, they may choose to endorse me. So that's the other thing. When I get to my LinkedIn, right, if I go to home, this is kind of like your feed, right, in Facebook. So you have a feed, and the people that you're connected with in LinkedIn have these discussions or things that they've posted kind of on what I'm calling the wall, or they've uploaded photos, they've published a post, they're sharing an update, whatnot. And you have the opportunity to interact with them. So you can like something they posted, comment, you can share it with somebody, that kind of thing. So I can see I'm connected with Tracy, and she's updated her profile, right? And so it helps you kind of keep up with what's going on, tells you who your contacts are now following. A lot of times LinkedIn will tell you how you might be connected to this other person's contacts. And so one of the questions that I get a lot of times, and I'm not sure I thoroughly understand, is whether it's a first connection, a second connection, or a third connection. And so I want to say, I had to look this up one time, I want to say that a first connection is somebody that you're connected with, that there's some other connection on a first level. So like if you're trying to connect with somebody, it's telling you that this would be a first connection or a second connection for you, then it's this person that you know, and then their first connection with this other person. And so it's kind of like this stair step with the way connections work. And I really, to be honest with you, don't pay attention to that. If there's somebody I want to connect with, it will tell you if you're connected by some other person on LinkedIn. It keeps up with that kind of string. But if it's somebody that I'm interested in and I want to connect with or network with, then I'll just invite them to connect. So here's a tip. If there's somebody that you want to connect with on LinkedIn and you click connect and it says, how do you know this person? Always click friend. Because if you don't click friend, a lot of times, or the way it used to be, is that it will prompt you to enter an email for that person. Well, I don't know what that person's email is. I mean, certainly I could look them up at their institution and find out what their email is, and then I could enter that, but that takes a lot of time. But if you choose friend, it doesn't prompt you for any of that. It just lets you click connect, and then they get an email, and then they choose whether they want to connect with you. So that's kind of my tip for the day. If you want to connect with somebody and that next window comes up, choose friend. Tracy's saying that's true because you try to connect with somebody and they prompted you for an email, Tracy? Yeah. So, but if you choose friend, it doesn't do that. So I learned that a couple years ago, always choose friend, and then it sends them the same thing regardless. So-and-so wants to connect with you. Would you like to connect with them? I mean, it's pretty generic the way they send it to you. So I'm trying to think of everything. But I don't really pay attention to my feed, but it's kind of where you land when you first get to your LinkedIn. And then I have actually created a group. You can join LinkedIn groups, and I've got quite a few groups here. So if I click view more, you can see all the groups that I'm kind of connected to. Some of the groups I've connected to on purpose because I was interviewing with them or I was interested in finding out more about them. The fact that they had a group was interesting to me. A lot of these groups are organizations that I'm a member of or associations that I'm a member of. But this group in particular is one that I created. If it'll let me click on it. It's thinking about it. So it says, you know, it's telling me take a minute to set up your group for success. And so it's asking me to modify the settings because I am the person who set up this group. So Denise is saying checking friends, doesn't it prompt you to ask how you know the person if not a friend? And usually when I check friends, it doesn't prompt me for anything. It just lets me click connect, and then it sends that person an email and says so-and-so wants to connect with you. If you know this person as a colleague or an employer, I forget what the other ones are, a lot of times it will ask you for an email for that person. And then you have to either know what their email is or you have to go find it. And a lot of times I'm connecting with people that I have no idea what their email is. I just saw their name on a list, like they're part of a hiring committee, or, you know, they're one of the editors or co-editors on a publication that I'm interested in. These are just reasons why I connect with people. There's a publication that I want to submit something to, and I know that this person is reviewing the articles, or they're on the board, they're on the advisory board, or they're an editor. I will connect with them on LinkedIn. I don't know if that's crazy or not, but I'm like, hey, why not? Why not let this person know who I am so they can find out a little bit about me and what my background is, and maybe they'll understand where I'm coming from with this manuscript. So anyway, so I kind of run this discussion for our GATE program here in the Department of Technology. And so I posted something yesterday about how our program gives away almost $20,000 in scholarships to GATE students. And anybody who's a member and anybody can join, I've got it set up so that I don't have to approve people who want to join my group. It'll tell me who the members of the group are. I can see who all the members are if I wanted to. I could reach out to any of them. Any of them can contribute to the discussion. So they can either like a discussion and they can contribute to it. I've asked things in the past where, you know, what do you think? I started out this by saying a graphics teacher wants to know, you know, what do you prefer in a graduate? You know, soft skills or, you know, industry experience. So here's an example. A graphics teacher wants to know what's more important for graphics students to know before entering industry. And I had quite a few comments. A lot of people who were joining this group were alumni from our program. Some of them are industry partners that decided to join. So like I was saying earlier, it's good to have a discussion, because the more you contribute to discussion, the more you're kind of out there and people are seeing that you're contributing. It makes you more prominent in LinkedIn, especially for somebody who follows what goes on in LinkedIn. So that feed that I was showing you earlier at home, then you kind of show up in that feed. So I can look at my connections. If I wanted to, this is where you would go to kind of look at your connections. And if you decided that you wanted to disconnect from somebody, you could do that. You can filter your connections. So the other day I was like, who graduated from Appalachian State? So I did a search for Appalachian State, and I wanted to search just my connections. And so then it showed me everybody who was a connection who graduated from Appalachian State. I was somewhere the other day, maybe it was in jobs, and no, it might have been connections. Oh, find alumni. This was really cool. So I was looking at this the other day. So if I wanted to look at anybody who was an alum from Appalachian State and where they currently live, where they're working, what they do, what they studied, you know, all these things, it's pretty cool. This was something that I had not seen before, and I was like, I definitely have to show them this. So if you want to look and see who are these people that you are connected with, so anytime it has a little mailbox in the message symbol, you're already connected with these people, and these people are alum from Appalachian State, right? So if I scroll down, in fact, she took classes with me. She was in my program, and when I was he took classes with me, this guy. He also, I was his teacher at Clemson, so he was in the undergrad program while I was a grad student here, and then he went to Clemson to get his graduate degree, and that's when I was teaching at Clemson, so I thought that was kind of funny. Some of these are industry partners, but they have degrees. There's Kate. She has her, you know, I think it's either they're an alum or, yeah, she's an alum in 04. So let's see, some of these are my students, like that Mikey's my student, Paige is my student right now. But if I go down, if I keep going down here, a lot of these are my students. You can see they're just now getting ready to graduate. It'll eventually, those little icons will turn into connect symbols, and it'll say, do you want to connect? See, so here we are. This guy, right, he's an Appalachian State alum, graduated in '86. Do you want to connect with him? Well, if I did, I would just click that. And then I would choose, like I said, this is where you could choose friend. It seems to me if you choose any of these other ones, they're going to be like, how do you know this person? What's their email? And then that takes a little bit more work. But if you just choose friend, it just lets you click connect, and then the email gets sent to them. So let me see if I can go back here. So that was kind of a cool thing that I found the other day when I was playing around on LinkedIn. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I'll go back here to my profile. The other thing that I wanted to mention was when I used to be what Emory does here at Appalachian State. I used to do that at Clemson University. I was in their kind of LTS department. I was an instructional technologist. And we had a power user, a super user in LinkedIn, this guy who taught accounting, and he was using it in his class. So he was actually using LinkedIn as a teaching tool in his classrooms. And what he would do is he would create these discussions. And so, one, it forced his students to connect with him on LinkedIn, to create a LinkedIn profile, connect with him on LinkedIn. And then two, he used it as a teaching tool in his classroom to create a discussion around a topic. So then it started elevating their profile because they were participating in a discussion, and so it kind of put them in the forefront. It was a really good idea, and he really was good at it. And I will have to, if you're interested, I can get his information. I forget, I'm connected with him on LinkedIn, but I forget what his name is. And we actually had him come and do what I'm doing here. He came and gave kind of a webinar or a training session on how he was using LinkedIn and, you know, how useful it was, and did the students like it, and did they participate. And what he found was that the students liked participating in LinkedIn discussion better than they did in like the Blackboard discussion forum. I guess maybe because it was social media and it was kind of out there and they were already there, it was easy for them to use. But that's kind of how he was using it. So I'm going to scroll, see how, this is the other thing. LinkedIn always wants to know, what else do you have to add to your profile? Do you have any published articles? Well, I thought I had conference presentations in there. Maybe I don't, or maybe they've created a new section. I don't know. So if you click yes, then it takes you to that section. It lets you edit it, basically. Or if I click no, another thing will come up. And it's continually trying to get you to update your profile. There's always something else to add, like I was saying earlier. So I'm going to skip that and go down here. And I know this might be kind of slow going for y'all since I'm streaming. So I think previously I was talking about my organizations, or I was down to my courses. That's where I was. So once you go past that, you have skills and endorsements, and then it asks you about your education. So where did you graduate from? You put all of those in there. Okay, so here's one issue that I've had with references from students or recommendations from students. If you don't guide a student, if a student says, I'd really like to recommend you on LinkedIn, if you don't kind of guide them through how to do it, because it's a little weird when you're trying to recommend a teacher. So the students ended up recommending me as kind of a peer instead of as their teacher, because I'm not sure if teacher is an option. And so it makes it look like I have a degree from Clemson when I don't. So that's kind of one of the things that was a glitch for me when I was first using LinkedIn, and students were like, I want to recommend you on LinkedIn. You know, how do I do that? And so they basically just chose the wrong radio button. And now it looks like I have a degree from Clemson. So, okay, so I've had students ask for recommendations or references on LinkedIn, though, so I have rules about accepting requests from current students. You know, I haven't had a lot of students ask for recommendations on LinkedIn. I've had them ask for other recommendations for like scholarships and things that were written, or they sent me a link to a form that I've had to fill out. But I haven't, I've either done one or two, or I don't think I've done many on LinkedIn. And we're right at the end of our presentation. I feel like I've covered about everything. As you see, this goes on and on. It shows all your recommendations, groups that you're in, groups that you're following, and then if you click Discover More, there's always room, right, like I was saying. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. Sorry to my other guest speakers. I went over time.
No, and that was great. I actually was kind of concerned that I think Tracy and I have stuff to add, but I was concerned it would be like, you know, not much meat. But I learned a lot, and you're a tough act to follow in this webinar session. I do think as I tried to think about the ways that I might mention something, and I know that we're closing in on the end, but you know, like Damiana, I feel like I typically have kind of it's been like peaks and valleys with my use to LinkedIn. Like I'll get into it for a couple of weeks, and then I'll I won't log in for a while, or I'll kind of leave it for a little while, and kind of the invitations stack up. But I do think that my initial reaction to start using this was just for the idea of the digital footprint. When I first started talking about LinkedIn and workshops, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, the idea we were trying to sort of get traction with is that when people Google you, because inevitably they will, and I think maybe Becky in HR could give us some sense of how often this happens, I kind of felt like LinkedIn was at least an opportunity to make sure I was putting forth something that was kind of a professional identity. So if you Google Emory Maiden, typically one of the top 3 or 4 results is always going to be my LinkedIn account. So I thought of it as, maybe a chance to shape some of that digital footprint, shape some of the information that's available for me online, and say this is stuff that I have at least some control over and that I can share with others as a digital representation of who I think I am. I guess the challenge is just updating it regularly, because I don't do that as often as perhaps I should. So, I've heard it's like, a lot of social media accounts are kind of like a shark. If they start moving, or if they stop moving, they die. So I've tried to remember to go in there occasionally and update it. But I think, finding other people to connect to. I also thought about mentioning the idea that I try to have some self-imposed rules, and Damiana was talking about how her students, ask her for connections or for recommendations. I've always heard it's really important to have some kind of consistency with that. So I don't tend to connect with a lot of people unless I feel like they would have some knowledge of me professionally and maybe me of them. But I also know folks who use LinkedIn and connect really with anyone that they come across. And I don't think either way is right or wrong. It's just the way that you choose to use it or how you find value with it. I do think, and I think Hope may have covered some of this earlier already, but I do think that not having to have the person's email address has been an advantage. Like if you connect with someone through LinkedIn, you can send them a message through LinkedIn and it goes to their email account, whichever account they're using. So, if I'm working with someone at the university and then they leave, I don't have their email address, but if I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, I can still send them a message and I can be connected to them. So I guess when I've thought about my use of LinkedIn, I've tried to remember to keep updating it. I've used it as some kind of digital footprint, a way of kind of shaping a little bit of what's out on the internet about me. And then finally as a way to kind of cultivate a more professional kind of learning community or identity, so that although I'm not really often looking for jobs or in that kind of area, it does feel good to be involved in kind of a professional social media group. So I'm going to turn things over to Tracy. She's probably got a couple minutes of stuff before we wrap up, and then we of course would want to take any questions from you guys or any information that you want to share.
Hi everyone. I really don't have that much to add in our triad. I'm the least common denominator in terms of my use of LinkedIn. I have to say I probably joined because of a little bit of friendly pressure from Emory related to this idea of digital footprint, and that I had lots of folks in my profession nationally in middle grades education who kept asking me, and finally a senior member of our middle grades community who had retired asked me, and I had to do it since he asked me to connect on LinkedIn. But I'm a senior faculty member here at App. I've been here the third longest of anyone in my department, 15 years. And I really feel that one of the greatest uses that I have of LinkedIn is endorsing students and graduates and junior faculty. So as Hope mentioned, I do things like facilitate the Course Redesign Institute. I teach graduate students now primarily who often are looking for jobs or promotions. And so rather than what I can gain professionally, because I'm sort of at this place in my career, I look at LinkedIn as an opportunity to give to students who need those endorsements and recommendations, if I can honestly give them. And so that is a way I kind of think about it. And then I hope mentioned this already, but I have found and connected with folks from conferences who maybe want to follow up on something, a presentation. So just recently I've made some connections of people who have attended the Conference on Higher Education Pedagogy. And then one thing I just wanted to mention in terms of transitions in my own career, though I've been primarily a teacher educator for a long time, recently I'm doing about half-time faculty development. And I've been doing what seems right and natural intuitively, but I've started on both Twitter and LinkedIn trying to find people who I can follow or connect with and learn from as I'm kind of transitioning to that different role professionally, seeing some things about their profiles, and sometimes it helps me, just like looking at Hope's today. I don't have a lot of projects in my profile, but that would be a great thing for me to add, and I could look at those things for others. And really, other than all the things that Hope covered, that's all I had to add to the conversation. We're at 12:02, so maybe Emory can take some questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that several of you folks signed up for a one-hour workshop, so feel free to leave at any point you need to. But does anyone have any other questions or comments or things that they'd like to cover today? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call it, and tell those who are still in the room that very much appreciate your efforts. Hope and Tracy, that goes to you guys as well. I really appreciate your sharing some of your time and your knowledge with us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, but we will, of course, hang around, and if anyone has any additional questions or concerns, we'll address them then. But thank you to all who attended, and feel free to leave the room whenever you need to.